I've listened to a lot of speeches in my life. I figured it out today. I've been in Toastmasters since 1983. And on average, I probably attended 3 Toastmasters meetings a month. Some clubs have, 4, and some have 2 like us. And over the span of time, it's probably 3. And there's usually 2 speakers on average at every one of those. And over that period of time, it's several hundred speeches. So you say, how many of those do you remember? And how good were they? That's a question for us, isn't it? And when I started to think about it, most speeches are forgettable. That's not a bad thing to be, but it's a practical outcome of what we do. We present a lot of speeches over a long period of time, and when we've done one, we sort of hive it away and get on to the next thing. And if you want to look back over your own speaking life and say, which was the best speech that I gave 2 years ago? Could you do it? It would be hard. Now think about all those speeches you've listened to given by other people. How many of those do you really remember? It won't be very many. And the longer ago they were performed, the less the chance that you'll remember. So I put myself to the test. I want to tell you about a speech that was memorable. Now, we normally think of speeches in terms of good and poor, or somewhere along that scale. There isn't just this vertical scale of how good were you, or how well did you perform on the night. There's also the one over time. How does that speech stand up over time? A memorable story will be remembered for a long time. So back in the mid-80s, when I was at the Toro Club, called Toro Pros, we had a new member. And a woman, Janice Chamon. And she was just at the point of getting married when we met her, when she joined our club. She came into the company and immediately joined Toastmasters. So Janice, we heard the last part of her getting to know you type of speech, and then we heard all about the wedding, and then after that, very quickly, she became pregnant, and so we heard the story of life developing. She was a great storyteller, and of course, since she was telling us basically what was happening in her life as it happened, we had a good chance of remembering that. But to be honest, it was all forgettable, because I don't remember any of the details. But what I do remember is one speech. And that speech stood out like a mile high compared to everything else she did and anything else that club did. It was called My Lute and My Rock. Great catchy title. At first I thought it was going to be something spiritual. It was nothing of the kind. Okay, so she's getting to be pregnant to a point where it can be seen. And they realize that they're really active as a couple. They do a lot of biking and walking and running and trekking and boating. This isn't going to happen much longer. With the baby on the way, Janice is going to have to cut back. So they decided to have one last major trip, and they did a long portion of the trail that runs along the North Shore, the Lake Superior Trail. And they did the part up towards Grand Marais. About the last leg. It's the most rocky part, and it's the toughest, but they did it. And then towards the end, it was photograph times. And so hubby says to wife, let's have a picture of you. And so they're on the cliff top with you know what's behind it, Lake Superior. And down there's a boat. And so he's trying to get this picture with his wife in it and the boat in it, and put it all into perspective. Step a little this way, a little more, and suddenly, whoo! There was a noise. And she wasn't there anymore. She had stepped back over the edge. Now, it's not a sheer drop, but what it is, it's like a rocky incline. And just where they were taking this photograph, there was a gully, a washout gully, when heavy rains come, the water's going to find its way down. That was one of the ways it goes. And she is struggling, this pregnant woman, struggling with a backpack on her back. It wasn't an overnighter, but it was the pack she was carrying for the day, sliding down this stony path. She told us the story in such fine detail that I can remember it all, but I'm not going to tell you it all. I'm going to tell you the point at which she saved herself. And that was when she was almost on the final ledge, which would have dropped down 20 feet. And she grabbed at whatever she could. She grabbed at a big rock, and it just went roll away. She grabbed finally at a root, and it held. And then she grabbed at a boulder, and that held. And she waited like that for about 2 minutes until her husband could get down and help her up and help her back to the top. That's the abbreviated version. But it's a story that became memorable because I can still remember it to this day. Not that I'm asking you to do that, but somewhere in your life, somewhere in my life, we're going to try and do a memorable